The sun shimmered off the calm ocean water as the luxury yacht pulled away from the marina. Laughter echoed across the deck as well-dressed guests sipped champagne and judged every little detail around them. And then she stepped on board quiet, alone and wearing an outfit that clearly didn't fit their picture of wealth. Whispers started instantly. Some smirked. A few outright laughed. One woman leaned toward her friend and sneered, who invited the help. The mood was thick with judgment, the kind that cuts deep without a word being said to your face. But she didn't flinch. With calm eyes and steady steps, she made her way to the far end of the deck, completely ignoring the shallow chuckles behind her. The crew, on the other hand, stood still, most as still. One of them nudged the captain, who immediately walked over, straightened his jacket, and said two simple words, "Ma'am, welcome." Instantly, the tone changed. The laughter stopped. Faces dropped. And suddenly, the one they all mocked became the center of confused stares and forced smiles. What none of them knew was that the woman they just insulted wasn't a guest at Al. She was the silent force behind the entire event. But why was she there, and what was she really planning? Because this wasn't just any yacht party, and she wasn't there by chance. She had a reason, a motive. And by the time the anchor dropped again, the ones who laughed would be the ones desperately trying to save face. Stay tuned, because the truth behind her calm smile is about to unfold, and it's a story that will leave them wishing they'd kept their mouths shut. Her name was Alina, but no one on that yacht knew her last name or what it meant. Dressed in a plain linen dress and worn sandals, she looked like someone who'd wandered in from the docks by mistake. But to the captain and crew, she was more than a guest. She was the woman who signed their paychecks, who owned the very yacht they stood on, and whose family had built the marina decades ago. Alina had grown up watching the elite treat people like furniture, only noticed if polished just right. Today, she wanted to see if anything had changed. Among the guests were investors, influencers, and old family friends, all eager to network and show off. None of them recognized Alina. That was by design. She hadn't been in the spotlight in years, not since her father's sudden passing left her in charge of the company. And while the board had expected her to disappear quietly, Alina had other plans. Plans that began with seeing these people for who they really were without the name tag. Without the designer label. As she walked past the buffet, she overheard one man whisper, "I heard she's the captain's niece or something." Another replied, "Well, someone should have told her this is a formal event." Alina gave a faint smile. She had handpicked every person on that guest list. She knew their companies, their scandals, their secrets, and some of them had forgotten what they'd done to get ahead, especially the ones who once dismissed her like she was invisible. The yacht drifted farther from the shore, and with it, the layers of pretense began to peel away. No one realized yet, but this wasn't just a party. It was a test. And Alina was watching every move as the yacht cruised deeper into open waters. Alina quietly observed from a corner near the railing, pretending to admire the view. But her eyes were on them, the same group of people who once voted her out of her own company boardroom, claiming she was too young and emotional to lead. Some of those same faces now laughed without a care, sipping expensive wine and talking deals, completely unaware she was back, and had never really left. At the heart of the gathering stood Victor Lang, slick in a navy suit, sunglasses never leaving his face. Years ago, Victor was just a junior partner at her father's firm. Now he sat as CEO, thanks to some very strategic moves right after her father's death, moves that Alina hadn't forgotten. He smiled and charmed, but underneath it all, she remembered the cold emails, the staged votes, and how quickly he erased her name from every office wall. She also remembered how he sold off parts of the company for personal gain, something no one else on the yacht seemed to know. Meanwhile, Claire, once Elena's closest childhood friend, clung to Victor's side, laughing too loudly, acting as if she belonged in this world. Elena hadn't spoken to her in 5 years, not since Claire chose her career over their friendship in the worst possible way. And now Claire glanced at Elena with a mix of discomfort and forced politeness, like someone who'd just spotted a ghost. Conversations swirled around Elena about power mergers, stock values, offshore accounts. She listened. She waited. No one had. Noticed that the woman they mocked earlier knew more about the future of their companies than they did. And soon the mask would come off. But for now, the game continued. Alanina was playing for keeps. The sun began to dip, casting gold over the waves and shadows across the deck. The laughter had softened, replaced by low murmurs and clinking glasses as the party settled into its quieter phase. Elena stayed near the back, sipping water and watching as the layers of polish started to crack. A few guests had noticed the crew's unusually respectful behavior toward her. One even asked a steward who she was. The steward simply replied, "She's the one who matters," then walked away. Victor was growing uneasy. He'd caught Elena's gaze more than once now. He hadn't recognized her at first, too focused on schmoozing and showing off. But now he was starting to connect the dots. She hadn't changed much, only grown more composed, more unreadable. He pulled Claire aside, voice low but urgent. "Is that Elena Hale?" Claire's face paled. She nodded slowly, suddenly remembering every ignored call, every brushed-off message from the past. Elena moved inside the main cabin. It was time. She placed a leather folder on the bar counter and signaled the captain. A quiet buzz spread across the yacht as the screens flickered on. Every guest turned, confused, as the logo of Hale Marine Industries appeared on the screen. Salona's family legacy. The crew handed out sealed envelopes, one by one, each guest receiving their own. Some looked amused, others annoyed. But their expressions shifted quickly as they opened the documents and began to read. Whispers turned into gasps. Contracts, audit records, board meeting transcripts. Elena hadn't come for revenge. She'd come for revelation. One by one, secrets were rising to the surface. The people who had laughed at her now scanned through pages that could ruin them. And outside, the yacht kept drifting far from land, far from excuses, and far from escape. As tension thickened across the deck, guests clutched their envelopes with trembling hands. Some tried to laugh it off, others whispered frantically, scanning for cameras as if it were some elaborate prank. But Elena stood calm, her eyes sweeping the room, knowing the real twist hadn't landed yet. Just as Victor stepped forward, about to demand answers, the yacht's engine slowed. The anchor dropped without warning. The vessel wasn't scheduled to stop here. Everyone turned toward the captain's deck in confusion, but the crew offered no explanation. Moments later, the screens flickered again, this time displaying not company records, but a video feed. It was surveillance footage, grainy but clear. Boardroom recordings, private conversations. Even security footage of Victor signing papers he once claimed never existed. Gasps erupted as familiar faces appeared on screens, some of them caught saying things they could never explain away. A few guests tried to disconnect the screens, but the system was locked. Elena's voice came over the speaker calmly. "You all helped erase me once. You won't do it again." But then came the second blow. A voice from the side of the deck interrupted everything. It was a woman, older, sharp-eyed, and holding a briefcase. No one recognized her, but Elena did. Her name was Lillian Trent, a federal investigator. By the way Lillian said smoothly, "This isn't just a personal gathering. You're all part of an ongoing inquiry." Panic spread like wildfire. Elena hadn't just exposed the past, she had built a legal case around it. Offshore accounts, shell companies, fraud buried in fake charity events. The yacht, now anchored in international waters, had become a floating courtroom. Victor froze. Claire backed away, and Alina. She hadn't moved an inch, because the real reckoning was just beginning. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence on the yacht was louder than any engine. The guests, once confident and carefree, were now pale and sweating under the warm evening sun. Victor stepped forward, trying to control the damage. "This is illegal," he barked, his voice cracking. "You can't do this," but Lillian cut him off, holding up an arrest warrant with his name printed in bold. "Actually, we can, and we are." One by one, crew members revealed their true roles, not just staff, but part of an undercover task force working with financial regulators. Laptops were seized, phones were collected. The yacht, Alina revealed, had been under surveillance for weeks leading up to this very day. Every guest on board had been carefully chosen not for their friendship, but for their ties to the shady deals Alina had traced back to her father's legacy. Claire broke down, her tears streaming down her face, as she whispered apologies to Alina, too late for forgiveness. Victor backed into a corner, tried one last desperate move. He reached for the briefcase beside Lillian, but Alina stepped between them, cool and steady. "That's not your power anymore," she said quietly, just as Lillian gave the signal. To begin arrests, a call came through her earpiece. Her expression shifted. "There's been a development," she said, glancing at Alina. "Looks like the board leaked part of this before today." "The press already knows everything," Alina blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected that part, as helicopters approached in the distance, their lights cutting through the dusk. Alina looked over the ocean. She had won, but not on her terms. Her truth was out there now, but so was the world's reaction. What came next, even she couldn't control. And that was the real twist. The next morning, news of the yacht's dramatic takedown had already spread across headlines and social media feeds. Corporate scandal unfolds at sea. CEO arrested mid-ocean, heiress Elena Hale exposes corruption. The world finally knew the truth behind Hallie Marine's troubled past, the quiet woman who refused to let it stay buried. Victor and several others were taken into custody, facing charges that had been quietly building for months. Claire, though not directly involved in the fraud, stepped down from her public roles and issued a statement of apology. Alina didn't respond. She had said all she needed to say without ever raising her voice. Back on land, the board of directors scrambled to save face, but they knew the game had changed. Alina was no longer the overlooked daughter they now understood. She was the rightful leader. She didn't reclaim the company out of pride. She did it to protect the legacy her father built and the people it still employed. She accepted the position of interim CEO, not to seek revenge, but to rebuild what greed had broken in private. Alina met once more with Lillian Trent. "You knew the leak would happen," Alina said. Lillian smiled. "I had a feeling, but the truth has a way of surfacing whether we plan it or not." That thought stayed with Alina as she watched the waves roll in along the shore. She had come to that yacht underestimated and laughed at, judged by the way she dressed and dismissed by the people who once knew her name. But in the end, it wasn't the outfit or the title that mattered, was her integrity. And now, with the storm behind her, Alina walked forward quietly, powerfully, and completely on her own terms.